Our Freedom School was named after Tyree Scott, who was a legendary community organizer in Seattle and really across the world. And naming the Freedom School after Tyree Scott, it's important for our young people to know our historical heroes and sheroes. And Freedom School is essentially a training program developing youth organizers, youth anti-racist community organizers. And throughout Freedom School, we explore issues of institutional racism, internalized racism. We go on field trips looking at the history of Seattle, specifically the history of community organizing in Seattle. We analyze the prison industrial complex. We look at nonviolence, really all to expose these young people to issues they're not necessarily hearing about in school, but not just to expose them to information. The hope and the dream is that each of these young people, when they leave Freedom School, will take their rightful place in the movement to transform our country, and specifically our region of the country, the Pacific Northwest. I have to say, this is the first time we've done 2 weeks of Freedom School, and I wish we could continue for another 3 weeks. I mean, these young people are amazing, and we should give them a round of applause just for their energy and their effort. So one of the things, we're going to start with our program, and we're going to introduce our first group. Again, they're going to give their presentation, and then each group will go around, then we'll have time for a dialogue. But before we do that, I'd like to let our panelists introduce themselves.
Good morning. My name is Glenn Harris. I work in the Office of Civil Rights. I am the city's Race and Social Justice Initiative Manager, and just want to say what a pleasure it is to be here with you all this morning.
Thank you.
My name is Mike O'Brien. I'm a city council member here in Seattle. I'm really looking forward to actually being inspired by all of you today, so I'm ready to sit back and learn. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And we especially want to thank Councilmember Mike O'Brien's office for hosting us today, so we should thank him for hosting us. So our first group today is going to be a group that's going to talk about how do we improve relationships between the Seattle Police Department and young people.
I'm Amani, and we are the group that's going to improve the youth and police relationships. Okay, so basically our group is about, we're trying to make the police and the youth see eye to eye and not, be enemies, and just think together and work as a group and as a unit, so that it can basically make everyone's lives better instead of all the fiasco and stuff. And one of our our big idea was do workshops together with the youth and the police, and our idea for that was the workshop should be in schools, and the police that goes to the workshop should be stabled in the community that they go to the school. So if the school is in Shoreline, the police should be in that Shoreline school district.
And basically what the trainings would be about in the schools is undoing institutionalized racism and adultism, and how that plays out in our communities. So just learning about how these systems are hands in our everyday, how we're affected every day by these institutions, and how a lot of times what plays out within our communities is a lot of times adults think they're better than youth, and they don't value the opinions of youth. And I think that's a lot of at least what I personally see as a dynamic between police and youth relationships. So I think trainings on that would be extremely beneficial for youth and adults, youth and police.
I'm Carlita, and we were also saying how they would go out of their way every day. The police would go out of their way, and how they wouldn't go to these groups and these workshops. They wouldn't go in their uniform, and it would be after their shift, and they would have to hide their guns because guns are intimidating. So we were thinking that they would be able to hide their guns somewhere, in a car or underneath clothing, so the youth doesn't have to look at it.
So these workshops, I'm Zola, and so these workshops would be there would be 2 weeks out of every semester, and they would be at the end of, we talked about maybe history or social studies class, because that's what a lot of this relates to. So that the students would only have to do it once a year, but the cops would have to do it once a semester, basically, with the students to help build those relationships.
one idea that was thrown around was there should be mediators in the trainings to help with the dialogue between youth and police, because a lot of times there's a lot of overpowering by police, a lot of police voice, and not really listening to what youth are saying. So there should be mediators to help that dialogue.
I'm Mary Claire, and our last topic is training should be between organizers who work and live in the communities, so they can work together instead of having just like out of the county police officers working with the children in the schools. It would be the children and the police in the same community, so it can better the communication between them, and it goes in a circle so that when their kids grow up, if they go to the same school district, the same things will be happening, and it will cause less tension between the adults that are cops and children in the schools. So you can just better the community, and it won't be so rough, and the crime levels will probably go down within the community.
Our next group is going to talk about ways to reduce violence amongst young people. We know there's a lot of violence that's happening in our community, not only here but across the country. They've come up with some creative ideas to talk about how to reduce violence amongst young people. So if that group could stand up.
I'm Asha, and our group is going to be talking about the violence amongst youth in the Seattle area, and our main ideas of how to stop it and solve it was the youth workshops about the ripple effect of an act of violence, and talking about like what they could do in the workshop, and depictions of reconciliation amongst gang members and using social media to show people what it's really like for everyone that's affected by the violence.
Good morning, my name is Kirsten, and so our idea with these workshops would be to have these within the schools and within the juvenile system. So kids as young as 6th grade, which is really when a lot of these kids get into gang violence and violence within the community, would be to have these workshops really early. So they'd be in the school, during school time, and there would be leaders from the community, people, ex-convicts, ex-drug addicts, who would come and talk to these students about what it was like in their lives, the people who were affected, their mothers, their grandmothers, maybe their children. So to really get kind of this realistic feeling of what it was actually like to be in kind of this violence. And we'd also have groups that would have conversations between young people in the community to talk about what they feel about the violence in their community, and to kind of have the open and honest discussions about this. And we had the idea of maybe showing videos of reality. What's it like to go through the juvenile system, and what's it like to not see your children until they're 21? And so just kind of the reality of these acts of violence.
I'm Margie Haywood, and I've been working with the youth at Freedom School for the last 2 weeks. So we have a really good group here. So I'm going to highlight the reconciliation piece. The idea that our group came up with was using social media to promote the visual display of reconciliation with gangs. We know the media has been used to show gang violence on TV, to show it in movies. But if it was the other way around, especially in familiar territory here in the Seattle area, 23rd and Union, 23rd and Jackson, 28th and Jackson, all these different streets, South Seattle, if that was used, short video, short skits were used, and men were recruited, especially men, were recruited from the communities. So they may have previously been involved in the criminal justice system, previously involved in a gang, and relatives. And these kids could see these local figures that they look up to in a negative way, but they could see them showing an act of reconciliation on these territories, handshaking, vocal reconciliation, saying, you know what, we have to end this has to stop. Those are the members that need to be used with these youth, because those are the ones that are perpetuating the cycle with the youth. They see their uncles, they see their dads, their cousins, their neighbors going into gangs, so they tend to follow that same trend. But if they see the uncles, the aunts, the dads reconciling with each other in front of them, then that cycle can continue, even in the juvenile justice system. So that when they got there, we have to stop this stuff from happening. So we need to really use our media as a tool, and even the lyrics we talked about as well, the music that kids are listening to. Somewhere, somehow, we need to make it familiar and hit home, and hopefully here locally in Seattle.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Isaiah, and our last point, connecting kind of with Group 1, but also with our own ideas, is that we should really talk about the trend that police are shooting more to kill instead of disarm, and that kind of robs people of a legitimate justice process, because, I mean, when they're murdered, they're gone. You can't do anything else with a dead body. And also that police violence causes or affects youth violence, because an eye for an eye makes the world go blind. Sorry to use the cliche, but it's true. And so using violence to fight more violence doesn't really do anything positive. And it would be better to go into the communities as the police and legitimately make an effort to, talk to the community and get to know what the real problems are, so that you can prevent the violence from happening, which would also prevent the use of the guns being used, and then you would just stop it at the root instead of just the surface.
So our next presentation is going to focus on the issue of youth unemployment, the high rates of youth unemployment, especially amongst youth of color here in Seattle and also across the country.
Hi, I'm Yang Yang. Nice to meet you.
Yeah, Yang. I'm Jacob Shank, owner and operator of Lamb Shank Incorporated, and I'm short on time, so this has to be quick. First off, I'd like to show you where the lamb come in off the trucks. We bring them off the trucks and bring them over to the butchers.
And where are these lambs coming from?
They come from the farm. Where do you think they come from? Anyway, the butchers are right here. We chop them up and send them to the deli. Thank you for coming. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Kaylin. I'm Miles Mitchell, founder and owner of Miles Mitchell Architects.
Hi, nice to meet you.
So how long have you been interested in architecture?
Ever since I was a little kid, building Legos in my room.
That's excellent. Perfect. So today I know that a lot of internships can be very rushed and very superficial, but today we're going to actually have you work on your own project and really get a benefit out of this program. How does that sound?
Very exciting. Thank you.
Perfect. Let's walk over here.
So what you've just seen are two examples of public-private relationships. And obviously one is healthy and one is not. But the idea behind this is that the earlier these relationships are being built, the companies will be more strengthened in the future. And so these relationships should resemble that of a family, meaning minimal hierarchy, so that they are more successful when they're trying to collaborate. Our vision is that if more mentorships are offered to directly at youth, specifically youth of color, it'll help to curb unemployment.
Our youth mentorship program will act as an alternative education program for youth who are having trouble in the school systems or are having trouble on the streets. And we'll expose these youth to the different job opportunities that are available to them, so they can find a job that better suits their talents and interests. And for example, a youth who's on the street selling drugs, for example, has already developed talents in marketing, supply and demand, and sales. So better directing their talents towards a business career would better suit their talents they already have and direct them in a more positive direction.
Hello, I'm Valentina, and I am part of an internship program with McKinstry, a manufacturing company in Georgetown. And what we are doing is working to promote STEM, the STEM program in schools. So STEM is science, technology, engineering, mathematics. And so we're also looking at different jobs around Seattle and kind of providing information for people and why they should come to Cleveland and learn more about these stuff. And why I think it's important to have good relationship with the mentors and as part of the internship program is because it helps to add depth to our learning and to also get to know the people in our community and really benefit from it.
Good morning. I'd like to talk about diversion alternatives and transferable skills. You know, this model that we are presenting you, the mentor program, is a viable alternative to incarceration of our youth, because it's much cheaper for a court to mandate that our young folks enter into a program. They'll teach them skills such as, you know, this mentor program, as opposed to sending them off to prison or jail or any other facility. This would also help our neighborhoods become safer, because it gives our youth something to look forward to. It gives them a positive outlet. You know, for many of the youth out here on the streets selling drugs, like Kaylin mentioned earlier, we have skills that are developed, and these same skills can be transferred to CEOs and politicians. If they want to be effective in their daily business, they have to know things like networking, communicating, and building relationships. They have to recognize a need or create a need for their product and or their message to be put out there. They need to have math skills. They need to quickly think and quickly act in the moment. You have to be well-versed in money matters so that you don't go broke. That goes into accounting, keeping track of sales, maintaining a balance between liquid assets and your investment in products that are waiting to be sold. So there's one difference to me between a drug dealer on the street and our local pharmacist at any store or hospital, and that's one is legal and one is not. So I have a question for you. How much more productive would a company be if they were out here in the streets with the children, with the youth, actively cultivating their future employee base within the communities that they do business? How much more beneficial would our communities be if the people in the communities were adequately trained and employed in a variety of different professions, thus enabling them to go out, provide for their families without being dependent on food stamps, welfare, and Section 8. Thank you.
My name is Miles, and I'm just going to be concluding. So you've heard our concept, you've heard our idea. We want, as the youth of Seattle, we want a mentorship program that really takes value of the students that participate and really builds the relationship with them. And so we don't want just job shadow programs, which can be very superficial and very glossy and not very beneficial, but we want true public-private partnerships in the community that will teach youth skills that are transferable into the office or into college or into their career, and perhaps show them what kind of career they want to proceed into. And also, it's also one thing that we noted as very important is that we don't just want to limit this to kids who are in school. We also want to have this program reach out to kids who are not in school, on the streets, and allow them to make a transition back into normal society. So I would encourage the City Council as well as the people in the audience to really endorse this idea and perhaps even organize around it. Thank you.
So we've also been joined by the Director for the Office of Economic Development, and we've been joined by the City Attorney, Peter Holmes. Our last group today is going to focus on reducing the racial disparities in the juvenile justice system.
Good morning, everyone. My name's Philemon, and here today we have Janelle, Sammy, Aaron, Issa, and Claire, and we're here to talk to you about the reduction of racial disparities in the juvenile justice system. And basically, our idea revolves around a creation of a program that would, it's not an instant fix, as you probably realize, but it would be like continuing, ongoing program that would be implemented into the justice system.
Personally, I feel like in order to reduce the number of Hispanics and African Americans in the juvenile justice system, I feel like first, as a society, we need to fix the institutions that an institution that students are faced with every day, which is school. And I feel like by teaching less, I feel like if there was an equal teaching of both, Western history and a history of other cultures, then a lot of our youth today would not have an inferior complex, which may lead to to selling drugs or doing things that they shouldn't be doing. And I feel like, personally speaking, I've had these feelings before of being, less than my peers, which are, I go to a predominantly white school, and I feel my experience is that as I've grown older, I've researched more about African history, and before colonialism, I think it's very important to teach youth about the history of Africa, the whole continent of Africa, and other parts of the world like South America, Asia. And I feel like by doing that, it makes me feel more empowered. So I feel like so I think that's the first step.
My name's Issa, and I think that at a young age, it starts at a young age. As we grow up, it's just kind of the way that society just has grown. In some areas, there's just certain things that you do, like in certain neighborhoods. And I think that if we started classes kind of maybe similar to like Freedom School, just maybe even once a month, like starting in elementary school all the way up to high school, that it would be really helpful for people in society, so that when they go out into the world and they get jobs, that things like your skin color or something, and you going into jails, it wouldn't be like something that most people would face.
So our goal is to reduce racial disparities in the juvenile justice system. And I think our main solution that we wrote down was to provide the entire juvenile justice community ongoing anti-racist enrichment, which to me means, I kind of wrote this down, you guys can add in if you want, but it means to me that it'll be like an intensive anti-racist awareness training focused on the failings of the systems, so the criminal justice system in particular, instead of blaming individuals for issues of poverty, violence, and addiction. So what is going on in our communities that invokes crime? How is the education system failing our children? What is racial profiling and why does it happen? And the ongoing portion of the enrichment program would be an intensive continuous community seminar where law enforcement peoples and et cetera could meet and apply what they learned in the workshop in their specific fields.
And during these seminars, in the beginning, it would be a collaboration of everyone in the system that has a passion towards ending this racial profiling and issues that plague the world today. And after those that were actively involved and passionate about ending these problems, it would build up onto including everyone and having it be a mandatory thing. And the program would be tailored to, I want to say, individual groups within the system. So there would be a slightly different training for a prosecutor or a judge compared to the lawyers and law enforcement and incarceration officers. And from there on, after that was implemented, we'd go into the schools and start teaching about racial profiling and how it can be canceled out, beginning with the youth and going on.
I remember what Sammy said yesterday, which I also agree with. I'm just going to speak for Sammy. Yesterday, he mentioned that that there needs to be more communication between counselors, teachers, and the parents at home, because my past experience and Sammy's past experience. You want to talk about it? Okay. Well, I've personally had this situation happened to me where this is when I was in 6th grade, I was put in school detention for 6 hours, and my parents didn't know that happened to me. And I feel like whatever is happening at school, parents should also know about it. I think there needs more communication. And I feel like counselors should get to know more about the student's life and understand, where these problems are stemming from, like, being disruptive in the classroom, so just trying to find out what's happening at home. I feel like that's very important.
So we've also been joined by Assistant District Attorney Craig Sims, who actually hosted the young people last week in a courtroom where the young people were able to ask some really probing and critical questions. Can you come up in the circle? So what we'd like to have an opportunity to do right now is to ask Nick, Glenn, and Mike to respond to some of the things that they heard.
If I could wave my magic wand, I'd hire every one of you. We need every single voice, everything you just shared, that's what we need to be doing within the city. So it's fantastic to hear you all not only name the problem, which I think, is actually the easy part, but actually come up with really constructive suggestions about how we move forward. I don't know if you all know this, but the City of Seattle, our Race and Social Justice Initiative actually focuses on institutional racism. And a huge part of our work is about really trying to get at what are the underlying barriers that get in the way of people's success as citizens here in Seattle. So, we really focus on the policies, programs, and procedures that work to the benefit of white folks and to the detriment of folks of color, frequently unintentionally. But nonetheless, the outcomes are all the outcomes that you all have been describing, right? The kinds of disparities we know exist in every key indicator of life. So I think there are pieces, and I'll let maybe Nick and Mike talk to some of this, but I think there are pieces of your recommendations that we're currently doing, but they're clearly not enough. There's clearly a lot more we need to do in all of them. And I had a question. As you all were talking, I was like, Dustin had said to me, I want you to make sure you ask some questions. You made it really hard, so let me just say that first off. It was like, yeah, that's right, I agree with that, so it was very hard to sort of think of questions to shoot back at you. But I do think that a huge part of where we're at really is around education. Education is not the end-all, be-all when we come to these issues, but it's the starting point, right? If we don't get folks on the same page, if we don't, everyone doesn't have the same kind of opportunities that you've had in the last week, 2 weeks, sorry, to really wrestle with and think about what these issues are, to have the opportunity to sort of develop that analysis, it's hard to imagine how we go forward. So one question I have for you is just a simple one, which is, how many of you think that Freedom School should be in the public school systems? Right? So that's one simple thing that we could really push that I deeply would believe would make a huge difference for how we all hold what it is that we're actually talking about. The other question I have, which is sort of related to that, is I loved the fact that the first group talking about youth-police relations, I thought all the suggestions were fantastic, thinking about sort of what how to bring folks together, how to create a space that was productive. But you all had thrown out that it would be great to connect it to history or to social studies. And I just wanted to ask why. What was your thinking as you all were thinking about that?
I think that we mostly said that it should be with history or social studies because, we can kind of talk about what brought all the, violence against youth and police officers, what made it so that they are not seen on the same eye-to-eye connection, that they're against each other instead of working together.
Absolutely. I love that. I really do. I think, way too way too often on that point that we, you know, not to get too big and heavy, but the truth is we live in a society where we don't want to remember what happened 2 years ago, let alone 50 or 100 or 400 years ago. And that context is really critical for us thinking about how we change where we're at today. There's a couple more things I want to say, but I also want to make sure that I'm not hogging the mic.
And we can come back to you, Glenn.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
You know, it was really great listening to you. And at the same time, as I'm thinking through, okay, how can I play a role in fixing this? It's apparent that it's a lot of work, and it's going to be really hard. You know, there's some things that I get to do as a legislator and pass laws that are kind of quick fixes, things that you just, you know, you pass a law and you change the price of something and that's all done and that's easy. But the stuff that's really meaningful and that matters it's going to take all of us working together for a long time. You know, I'm thinking about the comment of how the history classes we teach in school and which histories we choose to tell in that classroom have an impact on people. And as someone who's white and has all sorts of privilege, I don't think about that a lot. I get the history that I'm used to, and my life goes on. And then to hear someone tell the story about how when the history is focused on certain folks and doesn't talk about other folks, it's demeaning to your culture and your background, and how that is one step in a series of steps that leads to the situations that we can all identify today. I think it's really important for me and for, frankly, all of us to be hearing those stories over and over again, which is why I think that the Freedom School shouldn't just be in the Seattle public school system. It should be in the criminal justice system. It should be in all the departments at the city of Seattle and everywhere. Everybody in society needs to hear those stories and understand the impacts. You know, I'm one of 9 city council members, and so I get to sit up here and make votes on policies every day at the city of Seattle. And it's really hard for me to think through all the different impacts that a little vote I make has, and to understand all the different perspectives there are out in the society, and how when I think from my perspective, the decision I'm making, what changes that might have down the road, how do I encounter all the other different perspectives, and what are all the other changes, and is this going to help people's lives or make it harder? And when I sit in a room like this, and I hear stories, and I hear people that really are articulating so thoughtfully how the system sometimes works but often breaks down, that really helps me focus. But I need to be reminded about that every single day. And I need your help to do that. I think I would love to start by thinking about how we can take some of the training that your office already does so well throughout the city and expand it and build upon it, because it's something that we need to do. And starting with teaching the Freedom School throughout the criminal justice system, I think is a great place to start.
Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to echo what was already said as far as the incredible presentations that were made and the passion that was behind what you said. And I need you to know, I need everyone in here to know that it was heard. And I know that everything that you said came from the heart. And I love the categories that were brought up here, because even though they are separate as we look at them, they're all interconnected, because if one of these categories is out of sync, everything else is going to be out of sync as well. So I think that's just really important. I think what's really great about today, and it's great about any opportunity that we have to get together, is that we're actually communicating. I'm hearing you, you have a chance to hear from me. Communication is always the #1 reason why either relationships work or they don't work, whether it's from personal levels, one-on-one, all the way to what we see going on between countries. It's about communication. Dustin and I go way back. Dustin And I used to be the commander up at the East Precinct, and Dustin was up there, was an activist at the time, and was known for, speaking out about police issues and leading protests and things like that. And we were always chasing each other around the East Precinct. But there was always always mutual respect. And I say that only because even though we had different perspectives and we had different roles, if we hadn't had that relationship back then, I don't know if I would be sitting here today talking to you, because this is my third or fourth Youth Undoing Institutional Racism event. I've gone through the Undoing Institutional Racism, and I credit a lot of that is because of that relationship that Dustin and I have had over the years. So even with that, you have that opportunity to see a great change occur. I want to just touch real quick on the issue of reducing youth violence. Which group did that? That was the youth violence. Where was that at? Right here. Okay, I'm sorry. I thought what you said was absolutely incredible. What you talked a little bit about was holding each other accountable, taking responsibility. I think a question that I had for you, though, is what does accountability look like to you? When you know, or when you see, or when you hear that there is the potential for some kind of violence to occur, what is it that you expect from other young people as far as what their responsibilities are when they know those things may be happening?
Because the city is not giving youth the power, the outlet to create kind of understanding among youth, it's kind of it's the city's kind of job to create that now. That there needs to be more awareness around the situation, more, honest conversations between youth and between officials and youth, kind of in a comfortable setting. So I think that it's not really, if one youth sees another youth, doing an act of violence, that they need to, talk to them or, turn them in or something like that. That's not, clearly that it hasn't worked so far, and so we're looking to try something new.
Thank you for that. I think one of the things that we see often, and when we're seeing violence either violence in the schools or violence on the streets, is that many times when we start to dig deep into what caused that or how it got to that level, is a lot of people knew the situation was brewing. A lot of people knew that it was about to occur, and there may have been steps that could have been taken to stop that from occurring, either pulling people aside and asking them to chill out, or if they thought it was serious enough, making sure that the people who needed to know would intervene. And the other thing that I see a lot of times, that a lot of these crimes of violence and these things that are occurring often start because of rumors and gossip. And unfortunately, we're a society that loves rumors and gossip. I mean, you watch TMZ, or you watch the news. I mean, we love that kind of stuff. And those are the things that a lot of times end up causing these problems that occur between young people, well, between adults, doesn't matter, that end up causing those kinds of problems. But I also think that we need to hold the media more accountable, because I don't think the media does a very good job of outlining what people like you are doing today. They would much rather report on the 11 o'clock news that you guys were shooting at each other in Rainier Valley, versus saying, look at the great young people who have come here today and who are really trying to make a change in their communities. And that's one thing that I think we need to do all together, is that we need to bring I'm disappointed that there's not more media here today to say, look what's happening. But that's because good news sometimes just doesn't sell. As far as the improving police-community relationships from this group over here, you couldn't be more right on as far as that necessity to making sure that we are coming together and talking about our differences, talking about our perspectives. The more that you can learn, the more that you can understand, whether it's from police officers understanding what young people are going through today, and also for the young person to understand the perspectives of police officers, it goes a long way. We host an event that we sometimes call the Donut Dialogue, in which young people actually get to sit down with police officers, and they get to learn about each other's personal lives. And oftentimes what ends up happening is that police officers realize, and the youth realize, that their lives really weren't that much different, that these police officers grew up in very similar circumstances. So I think that's exactly right on, and we are always open to whatever opportunities we can have to improve on that and to create those opportunities for dialogue. We want to make sure that we're part of that. So,
one of the things we like to ask all of the elected officials, department heads who are in this room, Freedom School is for 2 weeks, but the youth continue on in a group called Youth Undoing Racism, and we would like to ask by a show of hands, would you continue to engage in regular dialogues with our young people around the issues that were raised? Great, thank you, thank you. And we're gonna make that happen. One of the things we hope as we break up that folks could also begin to talk to some of our young people. But one of the things we wanna do, and there's a tradition, our Freedom School was named after Tyree Scott, who was a legendary community organizer in Seattle and really across the world. And naming the Freedom School after Tyree Scott was important for us because Tyree did so much for any of us in this room to be where we are today. And it's important for our young people to know our historical heroes and sheroes. And we have asked K.L. Shannon, who had a long relationship with Tyree Scott, to kind of nominate a person every single year for our Tyree Scott Freedom School Award. I would like to invite our recipient this year, Lionel Lee, who is very personal to me. I'm going to pass the mic to Lionel, but Lionel is doing work. You see all these young people up here. Lionel is doing work that are saving children's lives, and this is what all this is about. He's using sports to reach these young people and to really lift up the spirits of these young people, to help guide these young people down the right path. And for me, he's very personal. He's a stepfather for my son, so we have a very close relationship. So I would like to let Coach Lee come to the mic and speak, and some of the young people who might like to say a few words as well. Coach.
First of all, y'all are wrong for this one. I'm a very emotional person anyway, so this is kind of jacked up. And they all know it, so this is really wrong. I was wondering what was going on this morning when I was coming over here. I thought I was coming over to speak about our school and to ask for your assistance. And I saw one of my sons, Marshall, downtown at like 10 o'clock in the morning. I said, dude, it's summertime. And he told me, he said, yeah, I didn't want to get up this early either, but I had stuff to do. And I'm like, okay. And I walk into here, and then I see a bunch of purple jackets walking in, and you know, I see the Hattermans who live in where do y'all live? Yeah, Lacey. Lacey, and they drove up. I'm really nervous all of a sudden. I'm not normally nervous, but I'm not used to getting awards either. So I was prepared. Boy, y'all just messed everything up. But I saw them, and I was wondering what's going on again, and I don't think I deserve this. So really quickly about our program, we're located up on 23rd and Dearborn. We are a for-profit school, which acts as a nonprofit. Many of our kids that come into our program cannot afford our program. So we kind of undercover, just let them do it. We don't care. I don't care. Our program is in danger now. We are going to lose our building. We've been around for 8 years. Hold on. We have been around for 8 years. In that time, we've developed 31 Junior Olympic gold medalists. We've developed 4 U.S. Open gold medalists. We've developed numerous silver medalists and bronze medalists. But the thing that I'm the most proud of is that we have had the opportunity and we're successful in touching many, many lives and also in bringing communities together. In our program, we have had everybody from the CEO of Zillow all the way down to the person that couldn't even see the next day. I'm very proud to be their coach. I feel very responsible for a lot of them. And we're going to lose our building September 1st. We have been looking feverishly to find another space that is appropriate. We can no longer afford to do what we do. I have personally gone broke over it, but I would do it again any day, any day. I have seen some of these kids up here grow from when they were these kids down here. We start at 3 years old and we work all the way up. Through Taekwondo, we teach life lessons to make kids successful. That is our goal. We don't BS. I'm not one of those coaches. I don't lie to our kids. We teach life lessons. And we teach about having self-confidence. We teach about the need to have respect not only for yourself, but other people in your community. We teach about the need to be accountable. We teach about the need to have a goal and to accomplish that goal. We challenge them every single day. There's not a single day that comes up that we don't have a life lesson that we can teach. And it's strange because we started as a group in my basement that was only there to compete in Taekwondo. When we opened our doors to everyone else, it became very apparent, not only to myself, but the people that were working with me, that we had an opportunity and we had a responsibility to act on some of the needs that we could address in our program. And we do that on a daily basis. I am very lucky to have the support of a community that I think is the most amazing community in Seattle. It is the most diverse community in Seattle. At our school, we don't practice racial tolerance. We practice cultural appreciation. And that's something that we want to carry forward. Thank you.
I just want to thank Coach Lee, who's been like a father figure for me since I was 4 years old, and I'd like to present him with this plaque here.
Coach Lee's been like a dad for me ever since I was 9 years old. I've been liking Taekwondo for all my life now. I've pushed myself to go to nationals and go to open. Yeah, and I want to thank Coach Lee for being there for me every time I was doing bad in school or not coming to Taekwondo and stuff. Thank you.
So I've been doing Taekwondo since I was 6 years old, and Coach Lee's been there for me for anything. I mean, I was into drugs, stealing, not going to school, disrespecting my parents, like the whole nine. And I mean, I haven't really had my dad there, and he's been there for me like my dad. I mean, he's lectured me, he's beat me, well, not beat me, but he's gone on me a couple times. And I mean, I can always talk to him about anything. I mean, he's like a dad to me, and I love him.
So I know there's people in this room that can help keep this school alive. We talk about supporting powerful things in our community. Here's something right now that's tangible for us to support. So I hope these folks in this room wrap your arms around Coach Lee, Coach Sarah, and this school. We want to thank you all for coming today. Thank you all. Thank you. Thank you.